As many of you are probably aware, the November 2022 update to GameMaker is shaping up to be one of the most impressive updates in a while. I've talked about a bunch of things that are in it already. Last week I made a video on array for each, which is something that people have been asking for arrays for a really long time now. And a little bit more recently than that, I talked about some of the new string-related functions and some other things that have been introduced in recent betas. But GameMaker has also given us a set of functional programming features for arrays. These are arguably the most interesting new features of all so far. Now, if you're already familiar with functional programming, you probably already know exactly how the array map, array reduce, and if I can find it up here, array filter functions work. If you're familiar with JavaScript, JavaScript now has a set of array features that are to do with functional programming when it comes to filtering, mapping, and reducing arrays. So do many other languages these days, regular Java without the script. Ruby, Python, especially languages that are big on handling data, are going to have functions like this. And now GameMaker has them as well. And once again, if you're already a fan of functional programming, you already know what to do with these, and you're probably not even going to need to watch the rest of this video. And if you're not a fan of functional programming, then you're probably going to look at these and say, why on earth would I need these? And this video probably wouldn't change your mind. But I'm going to go over these features one by one in this video anyway, and at the end I might also throw a bone to some of the other ones, some of the other new array features, which are mostly pretty self-explanatory, but some of them may be of interest. And as is the theme with a lot of the new array and string-related functions in this November 2022 update, a lot of them are functions that people have implemented themselves in GML in the past, which it's likely that you don't really need to do that anymore because they're now built into the engine. So, bears repeating, this is introduced in, I don't remember exactly which one, the 2022 1100.0210 beta update to GameMaker. It will be in the official stable version of GameMaker in 2022.11, so that's the November 2022 update. And I very much appreciate the new numbering system for GameMaker updates, because when I say the number, it now tells you exactly when the update came out, and you don't have to guess anymore. This is not GameMaker. That is Xenoblade Chronicles. This is GameMaker. So let me create an array, and actually another one of the new array functions is array create extended. And this, unlike the regular array create function, which will only take a single value that you can populate the array with, this will give you the ability to invoke a callback function, which you can use to return any value you want. And you can use that to populate each entry in the array, to pre-populate each entry in the array with the result of a function call, very callback-like, again, very JavaScript-y, instead of just an exact value. This is what a lot of people thought array create did originally, and it caused some confusion, and I hope that this, the new version is to people's liking. Anyway, what this is going to do is I'm going to create an array of 100 elements, and I'm going to populate them with the values from 1 to 100, just to keep things simple. 100 elements, numbers 1 to 100, right? If I were to show debug message array, we're going to see that. I probably don't need to demonstrate this, but just to get things started off so that we know exactly where we stand. All right, 100 elements, 1 through 100. I'm also going to throw a game ends down there. So just as a recap what for each does, in case you haven't seen the other video I made. Array for each will take two arguments. One is going to be the array that you're going to iterate over. And this is going to iterate over every value in the array, and it is going to call a function on the value. Again, this is going to be a callback. This is a function which you're passing in, which is going to be executed on every element of the array. Very JavaScript-y. And we can do things with this, such as simple things. For example, if you wanted to print out value I don't know. Let's say if value if it's an even number, if value mod 2 equals 0, Then this is an even number. And we can say is even, else we can say is odd. And I can actually use the new GameMaker string template system for this, instead of having to concatenate a bunch of strings like that, which is nice. And else we can say this is odd. So that's array for each. This is just going to print out 100 values in the console. It's going to tell us whether it's even or odd or not. Looks like it did its job. Right? That's great. It's a slightly more functional programming approach to writing a for loop over an array. And that's array for each. And the map, reduce, and filter functions that you can run on an array are going to all loop over the array in the same way that the for each function did. But instead of just invoking a general function that you can call on each element in the array, it's going to do something a little bit more specific. And also, I think I said this, but just in case I didn't, the parameter that is going to get passed to the callback function in the for each loop is going to be the value that's found at every index in the array, not the index itself. You actually do not have a way of knowing what the index that you are iterating over is in this function. And that's kind of the whole idea. That's supposed to be some information that you don't need to know if you're going to use one of these functional programming functions. So let's start with array map, for example. And this is going to take the array, and this is going to take another callback function. And the callback function is going to also take the value as an input parameter. And the array map function is going to map the values from one array onto a new array. So basically, this is going to create another array, and it's going to be populated with values that are in some way related to the first array. So if you wanted to just literally clone the array, I want to return value. If you wanted to literally clone the array, I'm going to assign this result to a variable called mapped array, and then I guess I can show debug message the mapped array. This is going to literally clone the array. So we're going to have the numbers 1 through 100 in order. If you wanted to instead return, for example, double the values that were in the original array, this is going to give us the even numbers 2 through 200. And it's going to be counting up, and it's going to be the first 200 even numbers starting from 2, 2, 4, 6, 8, and so on. And it's going to count us all the way up to 200. And this is going to be a rather simple way of creating an array which is going to have the each index being double the value of what was in the original. If you wanted to multiply by 10, you could multiply by 10. This is going to be the numbers 10 through 1000 rather. Spaced out by 10, multiples of 10. And if you deal with a lot of data, if you deal with a lot of long lists of data in games, this can be useful. If you have an array of, instead of just straight up numbers, if you have an array of something like NPCs or something, and you wanted to return an array which contains only like the NPCs' names or only the NPCs' levels or something like that, you could use the array mapping function, and you could have the callback take the value at every index in the array, which is going to be, for example, an NPC, and you could return npc dot whatever property you want, like npc dot name or level or something like that. But since I only have an array of numbers, and I'm not going to set up an entire long example like that, at least not now, I'm going to leave it as it is. Next, we have the reduce function, and the reduce function is going to, instead of just giving you a generic function that can act on every value in the array, or is intended to return a something like this, some value that's related to every number in the array. The array reduce function is used for turning an array into a single value. And as it happens, the example I used in the other video for the for each loop, the array for each function, was a little bit awkward. It was really just the first thing that I could think of because I was in a hurry. It basically summed up the values of everything in the array, and that is something that you can do with the array for each loop. It's not really elegant. It's not really what the array for each is intended to do. That is something that is actually much better suited to the array reduce function. So if I were to give it a function callback of its own, and this is going to take two values. One is going to be the value at the index that we are currently visiting as we iterate over the array. And there is also going to be the accumulator. Is that a word that I can spell? I can find out. And all of these new functional programming functions, you probably noticed, take a couple additional arguments on the end. I'll talk about them all at the end because they're all pretty similar. All the additional optional arguments to these functions are pretty similar. But there is one when it comes to array reduce that is a little bit more important than the others, and that is the initial value. And you're going to see where this is going in a minute. We can say reduced array value is going to be equal to that, and we can print this out. So if I wanted to add up all the numbers in this array, I could have this function return something like return value plus accumulator. And that is going to add the value that is currently being visited in the array reduce function as it iterates over the array. And it's going to add that value to what is known as the accumulator value. And the accumulator value is going to be the, it is going to become the value that is passed to the next iteration of the array. So this is going to sum up all of the numbers in the array. Once again, I get to talk about this little trick again. We can check this value by saying var expected sum can be, it's real just going to be 100 times 100 plus 1 divided by 2. This is the sum of a list of integers. And that can be our little check to see if this returns the expected value. And we can see if we are going to sum the numbers from 1 to 100 correctly. This should be 50-50, shouldn't it? Yes. That is the sum of all the digits from 1 to 100, all the integers from 1 to 100. So this would be a nice and simple way of summing up the values in an array. But because I feel like if you've never seen this before, I just totally opened my video editor by accident, didn't I? If you've never seen this before, this can still be a little bit confusing, and this is probably the functional programming function that took me the longest to get used to. The longhand way of writing this out would be something like for var I equals 0, I is less than array length, I plus plus. Yes, this is not the most efficient way of writing this for loop. No, I don't care. We might have something like var total equals 0. Total plus equals array at index I. Yeah, I opened my video editor. I don't want you up right now. That's distracting. So the initial accumulator value that you're passing to this array reduce function down here. So the third argument, it's called init in like the GameMaker argument names. This is going to be the initial value of the total that we're going to start off with when we try to sum up this values. And the current value of the total variable is going to be what is passed as the accumulator to the function callback as the second argument. And the value that you return is going to be what the total value is going to be set equal to. So the return value of this function is going to be set to the total after the callback is run on every element in the array. And honestly, in terms of the amount of code that I had to write, these two ways of doing this are probably actually, like the classic for loop is probably actually less code. And if you just wanted a simple way of summing up an array or of getting another value out of an array, you don't have to use the reduce function to get the sum of an array. You can use it for other things as well. You can do other math operations on this. Then you might honestly just prefer doing it the classic way. But if you like functional programming and if you like data-driven game design and if you like that kind of thing, the array map, array reduce functions are definitely for you. So I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to move on to the last functional programming function, and that is going to be filtered array. And that is going to be using the array filter function. Once again, we can pass in the array that we want to act on, the array that we want to iterate over. We can pass in a function callback, which is going to take one argument, which is going to be the value at every position in the array. The array map function returns a new array, which is going to be of the same size, and each of the elements inside the new array are going to have some relation to the original array. That is going to be determined by whatever the callback function does. The array reduce function is going to return a single value, and that could be a number. It should work for strings and other data types too if you really want. It is going to reduce everything in the array to a single value, whether that be the sum of everything in the array or something else. And the array filter function is going to return an array the way that the array map function does, but it's going to be a cut down version of the same array, and it's not going to contain any different values, but it is going to contain only values that meet certain criteria. And that criteria is, of course, up to you. So this function needs to return true or false. And if the function returns true, then the value is going to be added to the new array. If the function returns false, then the value is not going to be added to the new array. If I wanted to, for example, use the array filter function to pick out all of the even numbers in the original array, I could return... I could either say if value mod 2 equals 0, then this is an even number, return true, else return false. Or you could simply do something like return value mod 2 equals 0, and that itself is going to be a true false based on the outcome of this evaluation. And this is going to give us a filtered array which only contains the even numbers in the original array. And that is going to give us 2, 4, 6, 8, but instead of being like the original array multiplied by 2, instead of having 100 even numbers, it is just going to contain the even numbers that were part of the original array. So this will only be the first 50 even numbers going up to 100. And the array filter function is probably my favorite out of the 3 main functional programming functions, if you don't count the array for each. This is probably the one that I find most useful most often, and you can pass it in an array of values, and it'll basically select only the ones that you're interested in, and it'll return the new array. And if there's data in the array that you're just not interested in, you could just use this to discard it, whatever that may look like. But depending on what you're doing, you may have more or less use for some of the other functions as well. So the optional arguments basically boil down to you can choose to only have these 3 functional programming functions, or I guess 4. I'll say 4. I'll count array for each. That can count. You see the last 2 parameters to these functions are the offset and the length. So if you only want to have the map, reduce, filter, and for each functions iterate over part of an array, say the first 10 values, the first 20 values, maybe the last 10 values in an array, you can use the offset and length properties of the functions to tell the computer which parts of the array to look at. So if you only want the first 10 values in the array to be considered, I could say the initial position that we're going to be iterating from is going to be 0, and the number of values that we're going to be checking is 10 for the array filter function, and that is going to give us, when I run the game, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10, and it's going to stop there. It's not going to look at anything beyond that, and that can occasionally be useful. Just thought that's worth pointing out. And I suppose if I were to say that there's only these 3 functional programming functions in GameMaker, that's a little misleading. We also have array map extended and array filter extended. We don't? We do, I just spelled it wrong. And while the normal version of array map simply returns a new array, and the normal version of array filter returns a new array, the arguments that the extended versions of these functions take are identical, but instead of returning a new array, it modifies the original. So the array map function will not touch the original values in the array that we created up here, but the array map extended function will, and likewise with the array filter function. And there are times when you might want that, there are times when you might not want that. Again, it depends on what you're doing. And how long have I been talking for? Because I've recorded like a bunch of these GameMaker 2211 videos, like back to back to back, and I already know that tomorrow I'm going to have no voice. I'll just give a quick vocal rundown of what some of these other functions do. I want to write code for them. So, some of the ones of interest, array find index. This is analogous to the DS list find index function. This will search an array for a value. This is another one of the functions that I find myself writing fairly frequently on my own, and it's going to be nice to have it built into the engine. Array first, I'm honestly not sure what the point of that is because it's just going to return the first value in an array. You can just do that with array index 0. Array intersection, if you pass this function two different arrays, it is going to return a new array which contains the values which are in common between the two arrays. Array join is going to basically append the contents of one array onto another. Array last is going to be the opposite of array first, and it's basically analogous to array index the length of the array minus 1. Array map I talked about, reduce I talked about, union. Oh, what does that do? I want to say... Are these documented anywhere yet? They should be. I want to say this is going to return the two arrays appended to each other, similar to array join, but it's only going to... like, it won't duplicate elements if elements are common to both arrays. Let me read the description for this. Yes, okay, that's exactly what it is. You can join two or more arrays into a single one, but it will remove the duplicates. And... where were we? Array unique is going to be similar, but for a single array, so it's going to remove duplicates from a single array instead of joining two arrays and removing duplicates. Let's see, there are the extended versions of the functions, array filter extended, map extended, unique extended, so this will, basically remove duplicates from an existing array in place without returning a new one. And array reverse, which does not have a regular version. This will only, at least I don't think so. I don't see an array reverse in here. Is that already part of GameMaker? I guess it was. I never knew that was there. I think the name of this is fairly self-explanatory, but there is also now an array reverse extended, which will, instead of returning a new array with the elements in backwards order, it will, again, it'll do it in place. Anything else? Oh, there's a couple at the top that I missed. Array all? What does that do? Alright, that one I don't remember. Okay, this is going to iterate over an array and check if every single element in the array meets a certain criteria, and it's going to return true or false. And it's also going to invoke a callback function, which you can have return true or false. I guess that also counts as a functional programming function, even though it's... these three are usually the big three that people think about. And there is also array any, which I see is basically the counterpart to array all, in that it will return true if any one of the elements in an array matches the specified criteria. There's also array copy while. I honestly don't have a lot of uses for this. This is going to iterate over an array, and it's going to populate a new array with the contents of the original, but it's going to stop when it meets a certain criteria. So it's basically like a do until loop over the array in which it copies, or I guess a while loop, it's right there in the name, in which it copies the values into the new array. I can't think of many situations where I'd rather do that over array filter, but it's there if you want it. And with that, those are the new array features of GameMaker. Functional programmers rejoice. I keep bringing up my video editor for Xenoblade Chronicles today, don't I? Functional programmers rejoice. I know that there is a very small but vocal minority of GameMaker users who really, really like functional programming. And if you're one of those people, this is for you. Anyway, that's it. My name is Michael. I like wizards and dragons and making games. As with many of these computer science videos, I will not be posting the code for this on GitHub. However, I do try to post about 2 game dev videos a week, 1 tutorial, and 1 let's make a game. So if seeing more of the weird nerd stuff you can do in GameMaker appeals to you, feel free to subscribe. I have a Patreon, so if you want to contribute to the channel, links to that can be found in all the usual places. I hope you all found this useful, and I will see you all later. Special thanks to Army Armbuster, DJ Gibbles, Edward Holt, GameMaker, Harold Guidry, Jonathan Bernardez, Kiexi, Sindra Larson, Squarecrow, The Oz, and Zenjamin for supporting these videos. If you want to support the channel, head on over to the Patreon page down in the video description to join the fun.